The Harrison family reunion had all the usual trimmings, glittering crystal glasses, overpriced hors d'oeuvres, and the barely disguised competition that simmered under every polite conversation. My parents' backyard was buzzing with laughter and subtle status games as relatives tried to outdo one another in tales of promotions, homes, and luxury vacations. I stood near the rose bushes, half hidden, nursing a glass of wine and watching it all unfold like a theater production I'd seen too many times. At the center of it was my sister, Olivia, draped in a designer sundress and beaming like a model on a perfume ad. "You should see my new office," she told our cousins. "Corner suite, full staff, incredible skyline view. That's what happens when you work hard and make the right choices in life." I sipped my wine, hiding the smallest of smirks. If only she knew about my office, the one that took up the entire top floor of the Wellington building, the most exclusive high-rise in the city. Our cousin Beth leaned in conspiratorially, her voice sugar-coated with fake concern. "And how's your sister doing? Still running that little company no one's heard of?" Olivia's laugh rang out like a bell. "Oh God, Sarah? She's still playing entrepreneur or whatever. Started some consulting firm that probably operates out of her garage." They all chuckled in agreement. I thought about the file sitting on my desk at that very moment, Olivia's job application, which had arrived just the day before. She had no idea she had just applied to Eclipse Industries. "No idea I owned it, Sarah." My mom's voice called out, "Stop hiding and come join Olivia. She's telling everyone about her big promotion." Of course she was. Olivia had been gushing about her new vice president title at Parker and Sons for weeks now, never mentioning that her department's numbers were crumbling or that the company itself was quietly panicking. But to the family, she was the golden girl. I walked over slowly, feeling the weight of their judgment in every glance that skimmed over my simple black dress, modest jewelry, and lack of designer logos. Olivia's eyes sparkled as she spotted me. "There she is." She grinned. "Tell everyone about what do you call it? Your little business venture." "It's a consulting firm," I replied evenly. "We help companies optimize their operations and improve profitability." "How many employees now?" she asked sweetly. "2, 3, I smiled. "Enough to get the job done. Not everyone can be as successful as Olivia." Our Aunt Margaret chimed in helpfully. I thought about the recent $2.3 billion acquisition my firm had finalized. Headlines had flooded the business world, but clearly not our family group chats. "Speaking of success," Olivia chirped, "guess who's been headhunted by Eclipse Industries? They're offering me a director position." My heart skipped a beat. Eclipse Industries, the public-facing company I had built through my real firm, Phoenix Consulting Group. The very company she now wanted to work for. "That's wonderful," I said, keeping my tone light. "When's the interview?" "Tuesday morning." She beamed. "The recruiter said I'm exactly what they're looking for." I raised my glass to my lips to hide the grin that threatened to emerge. Tuesday's interview was with me. She wouldn't know that until she walked into the room. "Eclipse is supposed to be super exclusive," Cousin Mark added. "Nobody even knows who their CEO is." "Please," Olivia waved dismissively. "It's probably some old guy running the company from a golf course. Besides, with my experience, they'd be lucky to have me." Experience? I thought of the performance report in her application. Her successful department was hemorrhaging funds. Her leadership? A mask held together by borrowed time and borrowed money. "Didn't you used to want to work there, Sarah?" my mother asked. "But they never called you back?" "Because I was too busy building it," I said softly. "Oh honey," Olivia said, her voice dripping with condescension. "You shouldn't give up. Maybe once I'm in leadership there, I can recommend you for something. An entry-level position perhaps." "That's thoughtful," I replied. "It is, isn't it?" She gave a dazzling smile. "I've always tried to help you, Sarah. It's not your fault you're not as ambitious as me. Some people just aren't built for big things." She had no idea that her current company's entire financial ecosystem had already been under our scrutiny for months, and that Parker and Sons would soon be acquired by Eclipse. She was bragging to the person writing the check. "You know what they say," I said, smiling faintly. "Appearances can be deceiving." "What's that supposed to mean?" Her voice sharpened. "Just that success comes in many forms." "Right," she snorted. "Says the woman whose biggest client is probably a coffee shop." "Face it, Sarah, you're just not cut out for the corporate world." I watched the expressions of our relatives, all nodding along. Olivia, the corporate Queen, me the forgotten sister who once dared to start something on her own. But Tuesday was coming, and when she walked into that boardroom expecting to impress, she'd be greeted not by some stranger in a suit but by me, and this time, I'd be the one holding the power. The rest of the reunion passed like a bad sitcom rerun, relatives circling Olivia like she was royalty, while I lingered on the sidelines, barely acknowledged. Every introduction followed the same pattern. This is Olivia, vice president at Parker and Sons, they'd gush, and this is her sister Sarah. She does something with consulting. By dessert, Olivia had downed enough Chardonnay to become bolder. She cornered me near the dessert table, a glass in one hand, a macaron in the other. You know what your problem is, Sarah? She said, slurring just slightly. You're afraid of real success. That's why you're hiding in that little business instead of competing in the real corporate world like me. I looked down at the chocolate truffle I had just picked up. And what makes you think I'm hiding? She scoffed, waving her hand as if brushing away a silly question. Please, look at you. Discount dress, no-name handbag, driving that old car. Meanwhile, I'm out here living the life you could have had if you weren't so small. I bit into the truffle. Interesting perspective. She rolled her eyes. Whatever. You'll see what I mean when I get the Eclipse job. They know talent when they see it. Oh, I'm sure they do, I said, already picturing the look on her face when she walked into the interview room Tuesday morning. My phone buzzed. A message from my assistant. Conference room booked for Tuesday's interview. Shall we keep your name off the door as usual? I typed back. Yes. Let's make it interesting. Tuesday arrived bright and crisp, the city skyline glimmering beneath a cloudless sky. I sat in my corner office on the 50th floor of the Wellington building, sipping my espresso and reviewing Olivia's application. Her resume was ambitious. Claimed she led her department to a 40% profit increase in Q3. Records showed a $2.3 million loss. Claimed she spearheaded Parker's digital transformation. Our investigation showed the project failed and cost the company heavily. Still, she'd packaged it well, dressed it in industry buzzwords and inflated accomplishments. Classic Olivia. Miss Harrison has arrived. My assistant's voice came through the intercom. Security says she made quite the entrance. I could imagine it perfectly. Olivia in her highest heels, strutting through the lobby, making loud phone calls to seem important. She'd probably asked to speak to the CEO 5 times already. Have her wait in the reception area for 15 minutes. I instructed. Then bring her to conference room A, the one with the city view? No, I said. The internal one. The one with the mirrors. I want her to spend some time looking at herself. 10 minutes later, my assistant buzzed. Again, she's asked to speak with the CEO 3 times now. Getting restless. 5 more minutes, I said, glancing at the clock. When the time came, I slipped through my private corridor and entered the room quietly from the back door. My assistant led Olivia in through the front, her heels clicking on the tile. The CEO will be with you shortly, she said politely. Finally, Olivia snapped. I don't usually wait this long for interviews. Don't you know who I am? Oh, we know exactly who you are, I said, stepping into the light. She spun around, eyes widening. For a moment, she looked completely lost. Sarah? She blinked. What are you doing here? Are you interviewing too? I walked to the head of the table, calm and composed. No, Olivia, I'm conducting the interview. She gave a short, dismissive laugh. Very funny. Did you get a job as some kind of assistant here? Look, I'm here to speak to the CEO. So if you could just, I am the CEO. Silence. Her smile faltered. What? No, that's not possible. Eclipse Industries is a multi-billion-dollar corporation, and Phoenix Consulting Group, I said, owns Eclipse Industries along with 3 other major corporations. That small consulting firm you've been mocking? It's mine. Her mouth opened, then closed. She sat down heavily in the nearest chair, her purse sliding off her shoulder. But you drive an old car. You wear cheap clothes. You live. And I drive a reliable car because I don't need to prove anything. I wear what's comfortable because I don't need a logo to validate my success. And I live in the penthouse at the Wellington. I just never bragged about it. Her face had turned pale. The illusion she had built, the one where I was a nobody, was crumbling in real time. Why didn't you tell anyone? She whispered. Tell them what? That while they were mocking my career, I was building an empire? That while you were taking out loans to fund your lifestyle, I was funding acquisitions? I pulled her resume from the folder in front of me, which, brings us to this imaginative piece of fiction. She flinched. My resume is accurate, she said quickly. Really? Led team to 40% profit increase in Q3 even though records show a multi-million-dollar loss. Spearheaded digital transformation, you mean the failed rollout that crashed your systems for a week? Those numbers are confidential. How did you? I specialize in corporate analysis, Olivia. I knew more about Parker and Sons than you did before you even hit send on this application. She swallowed hard. So what? Is this revenge? For how I treated you? Revenge? I gave a soft laugh. This isn't revenge. This is just business. Olivia sat frozen in the chair across from me, her perfectly curated image unraveling like a cheap thread. Her chin trembled, but she fought to keep her composure. I'm still highly qualified, she said, voice a little hoarse. I've managed large teams, handled million-dollar budgets. Your experience, I cut in smoothly, is a masterclass in failing upward. Every company you've worked at saw declining performance under your leadership. You moved on just before they collapsed or before people figured out where the cracks started. Her eyes welled up with tears. You can't do this to me. I'm your sister. Funny how that only mattered now. Where was that sentiment? I said coolly, when you laughed at my firm, mocked my decisions, and told our entire family I was a failure? When you offered to get me an entry-level job at the very company I own? I didn't mean it like that. Yes, you did. You always meant it like that. I let the silence hang before continuing. You've spent years pretending your success meant more because it was louder, because it looked shinier. But now you're here on the other side of the desk facing the one person you never thought you'd have to answer to. She gripped the table edge, her knuckles white. What now? Are you going to humiliate me publicly? Tell mom and dad? Announce it at the next reunion? No need, I said with a tight smile. The truth always reveals itself. In fact, your company will be revealing a bit more than you expected. Her brow furrowed. What does that mean? I own Phoenix Consulting Group, I reminded her. We've just finalized the acquisition of Parker and Sons. She blinked. What? Effective this week, Parker and Sons will become a subsidiary of Phoenix. Your department, the one you mismanaged into the ground, is being eliminated. Along with your position. The silence in the room turned thick and suffocating. You're firing me? No, I said calmly. I'm eliminating a redundant position during a necessary corporate restructuring. It's not personal. It's business. Though, let's be honest, if I were choosing who to keep, it still wouldn't be you. I could have been as successful as you, she said, voice breaking. I just didn't know. No, I replied. You didn't want to know. You were too busy chasing the image of success to recognize the real thing when it was sitting next to you at dinner. While I was working 18-hour days, you were buying handbags and posting about hustle culture on Instagram. She stood suddenly, her designer heels clicking loudly on the floor. Her cheeks were wet now, mascara beginning to run. I'll tell everyone. About what you did? That you humiliated me. Go ahead, I said. Tell them that the sister you called a nobody is the CEO you lied to in a job interview. That the empire you mocked quietly swallowed your career whole. I'm sure they'll be very understanding. She froze at the door, hand on the handle, but turned one last time. Maybe you're right. Maybe I never took it seriously. Maybe I was too focused on appearances. I didn't respond. Some realizations hit harder in silence. I just wish I'd seen it sooner. Some lessons, I said quietly, you have to learn the hard way. She nodded once slowly, then opened the door and left. Over the following weeks, the family grapevine exploded like wildfire. Olivia's dramatic exit from Parker and Sons became impossible to hide once the acquisition was announced publicly. Suddenly, the vice president had no job, no office, no company to brag about. Our relatives who had always seen her as the golden child started calling me. Congratulations, Sarah. Why didn't you ever tell us? You're the CEO of Eclipse Industries? My inbox flooded with messages from cousins who once rolled their eyes at my little business. My mother left tearful voicemails. My father, who had never truly understood what I did, sent an email suggesting lunch. Business opportunities, he wrote. I ignored them all. Weeks passed, but the aftershocks of Olivia's fall echoed loudly, especially within the Harrison family circle. Every brunch, every text thread, every quiet phone call turned to the same topic. Did you hear what happened with Olivia? The woman, who once flaunted her title at every family event, had been unceremoniously dropped from Parker and Sons. Of course, The official story she peddled was that she had resigned after realizing the company was no longer aligned with her career goals. But word traveled fast, especially after Eclipse Industries announced the restructuring and press releases named me as the CEO of the parent company. Photos of me standing with our executive team, closing the Parker deal, were splashed across business publications. Suddenly, the sister who did something with consulting had become the face of a billion-dollar empire. My phone lit up with messages from former classmates, ex-colleagues, and long-distant relatives, all singing the same tune. I always knew you were going to make it big. Would love to reconnect sometime. Are you hiring? The same people who once dismissed me now wanted a seat at my table. One day, a handwritten note arrived at my office. I understand now what you were trying to tell me all those years. Success isn't about appearances. I'm sorry I never saw that or you clearly. Olivia, it was simple, honest, painful in its humility. I stared at the letter for a long time. We'd grown up in the same house, raised by the same parents, taught the same lessons about hard work and success. But somewhere along the way, Olivia had bought into the glittering illusion titles, handbags, rooftop condos as symbols of having made it. I had simply chosen the longer road, the quieter one, and it had taken everything falling apart for her to finally look up and see what I had built. I didn't reply to the letter. Some lessons I'd learned aren't meant to be acknowledged, they're meant to linger. Instead, I returned to work. Eclipse Industries had just closed another strategic partnership, and Phoenix Consulting Group was expanding into the European market. We had hired 300 new employees, opened a fourth headquarters in Singapore, and were prepping for an international innovation summit. In the middle of all this, I still chose to drive the same reliable car, wear comfortable clothes that didn't scream designer, and eat at the same neighborhood restaurant I'd loved for years. None of those choices diminished who I was. In fact, they reminded me of where I'd come from and what really mattered. A few months later, I ran into Olivia at a family wedding. She looked different. Gone were the high heels, the flashy jewelry, and the affected confidence. She wore a simple blue dress, her makeup minimal, her hair in a modest braid. There were no boasts this time, no job title updates, no pitying glances. "Hi," she said softly, when we found ourselves alone for a moment near the dessert table, the same spot where she'd once cornered me and mocked my discount store dress. "Hi," I replied. She hesitated. "I'm working at a small firm now, junior analyst position." "It's humbling." I nodded, not out of condescension, but because I knew exactly how hard it must have been to say that out loud. "Sometimes starting over," I said, "is the bravest thing you can do." Her eyes watered slightly, but she smiled. "I'm trying to learn what matters. It's hard to let go of everything I thought success looked like. You're not the only one who had to unlearn some things." We stood there in silence. For a moment, the music from the reception drifting over the grass. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked finally, taking the quiet path. I looked across the lawn to where my executive team sat, people I trusted, respected, and had built something incredible with. I thought of our global staff, our interns turned leaders, our innovative projects changing industries. "No," I said, "not once." The months after Olivia's failed interview unfolded with poetic irony. Her voice, once the loudest in every room, softened. The family gatherings changed, too less about who had the fanciest car, and more about who had the most peace. Olivia now arrived quietly, often bringing homemade desserts instead of designer handbags. She'd traded her flashy apartment for a modest one, and though she didn't say much, her eyes said everything. I didn't gloat. I didn't need to. The success I built didn't scream, it whispered, echoed in headlines, and lingered in boardrooms. Meanwhile, Phoenix Consulting Group was thriving. We closed 2 more international acquisitions, launched a mentorship program for young women in business, and opened innovation hubs in both Berlin and Seoul. One of our rising interns had just pitched a groundbreaking AI logistics tool that could change supply chains worldwide. This was the kind of impact I had always dreamed of: quiet, strategic, meaningful. And yet, in all the meetings, conference calls, and quarterly reports, I often thought of that reunion day, the moment Olivia told our cousins I was probably working out of my garage. Now, that garage housed 1,200 employees. Across 5 continents, the press got wind of the Harrison family drama. Eventually, a viral LinkedIn post told the short version. The woman mocked at her family reunion turned out to be the CEO her sister begged for a job from. It got over 6 million views. Reporters asked for interviews. Book publishers sent offers. A producer from a major streaming platform reached out about turning it into a movie. I declined them all, because this story wasn't about public revenge. It was about private transformation and knowing, deep inside, that I had never needed validation to begin with. One late Friday evening, I sat alone in my office overlooking the glittering city skyline. A notification popped up, a calendar request titled Dinner with Mom and Dad. Apparently, my parents were making an effort. They had started calling more often after my name began appearing in Forbes and Bloomberg. At first, their messages were clumsy, filled with awkward pride and guilt. But over time, their tone shifted. They had finally begun to see me, not just as Sarah, the younger sister, but as Sarah Harrison, a woman who built an empire from dust. Maybe I'd go to dinner. Maybe I'd just keep building. A knock at the door pulled me from my thoughts. It was my assistant holding a package. "It's from Olivia," she said. I opened it slowly. Inside was a simple glass paperweight. Etched on it were 5 words. Pride came. Then I saw. Beneath it was a handwritten note. "You were right. I see it now. Thank you for showing me another way." Olivia. I stared at the paperweight for a long time. Then I placed it next to my first business license, the one I registered on a shoestring budget in a shared workspace over a decade ago. From that tiny spark had come an empire, not fueled by bitterness, but by belief. And so, the girl who was once told she wasn't ambitious enough, the sister mocked for being too ordinary, the founder underestimated by her own family, became the CEO of a future they never saw coming, not by proving them wrong but by proving herself right.